Hello friends, today we'll be discussing microbial taxonomy. So what's taxonomy? It's a science that deals with the classification and naming of living organisms. It's a science that classifies living organisms, that groups living organisms, arranges living organisms according to their shared characteristics. Again, it's a branch of biology that deals with classification and naming of all living organisms based on their shared characteristics. Let's take an arbitrary example. Let's say we have two organisms, organism 1 and organism 2. This example is designed to give you an idea of how classification works. Suppose we have two organisms, organism 1 and organism 2. Organism 1 is drawn in yellow and here is its genetic material. Organism 2 is in orange and here is its genetic material. And we want to compare these two organisms. We want to find out the similarity between these two organisms, between the shared characteristics of these two organisms. We do that by measuring the similarity of their DNA. DNA is the recipe of the organism. It is what determines the characteristics. And according to the shared characteristics, they are grouped, they are classified. Okay, so we use a technique called DNA hybridization, and this technique will be explained in the next video. Now, let's look. If the similarity between the two organisms, the similarity of their DNA was 50%, those two organisms belong to the same genus but different species. If the similarity of the DNA of the two organisms was 90%, that means those two organisms belong to the same species but different strains. Only at 100% do we say that these two organisms belong to the same strain. Okay. The Swedish scientist Carlos Linus is considered the father of modern taxonomy. Why is that? Because he did two things. He developed two things. First, he developed the hierarchical system, the system of biological classification that is still in use today. Number two, he developed a two-term naming system called the binomial system, also called the linear system. This system was explained in our first video on virology, and the link will be in the description down below. The classification system classifies organisms into very large groups, like kingdoms. And these groups keeps being divided into smaller and smaller subgroups. So let's say a kingdom will be divided into smaller subgroups. Each one is a phylum, etc. Each large group is a taxon. Each subgroup is also called a taxon. So each group is a taxon. Each smaller group or smaller subgroup is called a taxon. A taxon is a group of related organisms. A taxon is any unit used in taxonomy, any unit. A taxon is any group of related organisms in the classification system. A taxon is a group of organisms that have a certain percent. It's not a defined percent, it's a certain percent of shared characteristics. Each taxon will be having a taxonomic rank. We said it's a hierarchy. There is higher ranks and there is smaller ranks. So, the system is a hierarchical system, an inverted pyramid system. An inverted pyramid system. The large groups are at the top. They have the highest taxonomic rank called domain. Each domain is subdivided into a bit smaller, but not small. It's just smaller than the domain. Subgroups called kingdoms. Each kingdom is divided into smaller subgroups called phylum, then class, then order, then family, then genus, then species, etc. A domain contains many different organisms, many different members, but they have fewer shared characteristics between them. Let's say, for an example, a class would be containing less organisms, much less members, but they will be having more similar shared characteristics. So as we go down, there is an increase in shared characteristics as we go down the pyramid. An example, just to make you understand, Staph aureus, the wild type strain, and the resistant strain Mersamicillin resistant Staph aureus. They are different strains but belong to the same species. They belong to the same species, different strain in the same species. The small part is the tip of the pyramid. They have more shared characteristics between them than, let's say, Staph aureus and Staph epidermidis. Staph aureus and Staph epidermidis belong to the same genus. That means they have less shared characteristics between them than Staph aureus, the wild type, and Mersum. Okay. Thank you for being such a good listener, and good luck to you all, and hope this video tutorial have helped you. Goodbye.